Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here with JB79. This is episode 7 of the Leonis report. We are cruising along here, JB. Obviously, another week down. How you feeling about this week so far?
It's going good. We just had a pretty huge week in the game. Full Metal Alchemist coming in, pretty hype collab, two great units, and yeah, been working on them and testing them out. So, how about you? How are things in the game this week?
Definitely busy. Obviously, new limited guild war, and it's cool to like bring out some new units on an old map and class match or quick pick, and then just the regular free match because the metal bonuses and yeah, two new units to play with. There's a lot going on for sure, for sure. We unfortunately though don't have necessarily a ton to talk about today, given the news release that came out on Monday. We are going to recap limited guild wars and stuff, but before we get even into that, just for those of you watching, we will be on hiatus next week. I'm going away for a little trip to Florida, and so won't be here to record, but we'll be back the week after. And so, yeah, we'll go from there. But for now, kicking things off, the Battlegrounds of Arja, we're going to go through a couple quick things here related to Roy Mustang, who's the brand new unit announced. I did want to take a quick 30 seconds, though, just to talk about some feedback that I got from the recent video I put out about joining VIP and the immense, awesome feedback we got from it and the influx of applications we got. Visipoor has now renamed itself to Visipoor after the, let's say, attention it got. That we got some Runic Blades members that ended up joining. Many of you that applied from the channel ended up joining, so big welcome to all of you. And we actually got so many applications that we decided to merge a couple guilds where actually the former guild Memoria, which is also Sin in Midgard, they were kind of this rank 19 guild. They're being renamed to Reincarnated, so a lot of the applications, you guys are congregating there, and we're hoping to bring some leadership down and kind of like, you know, help fine-tune the guild war mechanics of what you guys want to learn there. And then we even have another guild, Be Olives, and rank 400 is kind of a casual guild, and Retired is another casual guild we have where a lot of former members are in, and they are quickly rising up. So big thanks for all of that. I wanted to just take a moment, you know, I don't want to make a whole new video about that, but exciting stuff going on there. Yeah, so kicking things off now with the actual Full Metal collaboration, we have Roy Mustang coming this week, who new 90 cost fire unit. Yeah, I mean, classic Snap. It's just so iconic. One
Yeah,
of the more notable characters in the series. How do you feel about him so far, JB? Excited?
I'm pretty excited. I mean, he's awesome in the anime. They did an amazing job with his design. Love the way he looks. He's coming into the fire element, which has been getting a lot of attention lately after, both of us griped on it pretty much all of last year. And it was a pretty tough element for 2022, but this year is kind of taken a complete 180. I know that some people have been maybe kind of nonplussed about Roy. I think that's kind of the nature of being maybe just a decent or pretty good 90, like, and just there's just so many 100 costs coming out at this point that it's kind of hard to set yourself apart unless you're kind of like that frontline tank, or maybe you're like a really good support unit. Those are the units they tend to maybe give a little bit more love at the 90 cost than just your kind of ho-hum damage dealer. But he's pretty good. I think, like, for his cost, he's got a little bit of survivability, like with a barrier. He's really accurate. That's kind of probably one of the best things about him. And then he's kind of like a chaining damage dealer, and that's kind of what he can do.
Which is very unique for magic damage dealers. I was actually surprised a couple of weeks ago you mentioned him in the Guild Raids context, and never occurred to me because most magic units are not suitable units for those kinds of things, just because the magic type attack does not chain, but the elements do. And so you're right.
Yeah.
For Roy Mustang, he's got a triple hit on the main kit. He's also got his limit break, which is a quadruple hit. So yeah, I was very surprised, particularly because I know part of what he does is some like spirit imperils, and if you do that, you know, obviously you have to. That only affects other magic units, and I wouldn't expect to bring multiple magic units to a guild raid. So it's I wouldn't have thought of it on paper. Well, I was very intrigued though.
Well, one kind of interesting thing about the most recent guild raid and over on the Japanese side, they have considerably buffed the max damage cap of magic damage dealers or magic attacks. And I think they go up to, like, I want to say it's like 48,000 damage cap or
Oh, I had
something like
no
that.
idea. Okay, that changes everything then. Yeah.
So yeah, it completely changes it. So basically, at least for that particular guild raid, they've really changed things up, and magic damage dealers are the best for that particular guild raid. It seems to me that they'll maybe kind of start changing that up and kind of maybe spice it up a little bit by boosting certain damage types, and that can kind of add a little bit to the strategy and also get you to want to pull more, right? Because you want to kind of diversify beyond just the standard slash chaining and physical chaining. But Roy, you know, at least for that guild raid, is going to be a really good unit. No, I don't recall if there's a ice boss, but you know, with Glassy, who can also triple hit chain as a magic damage dealer, and Roy now, you know, that's you can also bring in like the chaining VC that came out for with Halloween Lucia. You know, fire could be like a, you know, pretty low key good in that particular guild raid, even if there isn't an ice boss. So
Definitely, definitely. And you know, you brought up a good point. I'm actually almost conflicted about them with the damage cap on that, because on the one hand, I feel like that's how they're going to exploit making people pull the newest units, and that you incentivize them to pull the new unit to then, you know, maximize the damage. On the other hand, we've had a pretty strong bias this whole time toward just like slash chainers, right? And so on the other hand, it's like, well, no, it's nice to get some other units that can finally have a chance to shine. Obviously, like be able to theory craft outside of the norms. So on the one hand, there's a piece of me that's like, oh, they're going to grab us by the balls again, and like Dark Visions and FFBE, like you got to have the newest and greatest to compete. But on the other hand, it's a balance thing. I don't mind it.
I feel like at least in terms of guild raids, they don't, at least right now, they don't come around often enough that, you know, I'm super compelled to pull just for that particular event.
Same.
Although personally, I do like it. It's one of my favorite modes. But yeah, maybe if they started coming more often and there was more rewards on the line, that could be something that they could look into. But
I would agree with that. Yeah, I appreciate it for seeing what people do with it and having those moments where you're like, oh, this is so cool to see how people attack it. But the amount of time it takes to reach those high scores, and the day in, day out, and the trust on management, it can be quite a cumbersome event for many. But
yeah, more template slots, please, Gumi.
do
Get on it.
template slots all day for sure, for sure.
Please.
But yeah, no, I'm intrigued for Roy Mustang. I'm personally like tempering expectations, if only because I know from just looking at his kit, I don't know if there's anything terribly unique per se in terms of mechanics. I almost kind of got like Terra vibes from him, where the concept of the character is just like do a lot of damage and try to like not die. And sometimes those characters work really well. I know like Halloween Lucia did work really well. Oftentimes those characters are kind of one dimensional, and the game just kind of power creeps past them to a certain degree. And obviously for fire, we got an evasion set of fire. Now we have like a Hyo version of fire. There's still like some old viable fire units too that aren't new that certainly could come into the mix still. So Kefka is on the way as well, another fire magic unit. So it's very interesting to think of how Roy does fit into that. And I know he also gets some slack from the community for his vision card, which is coming out this week. So the new vision card here is the Defenders of the Bonds of Brotherhood. And this is a card that is, you know, primarily focused on glove units. The biggest thing here that I think most people would look for is the 28% magic res pen as something kind of a little unique. The Pierce res pen, the crit rate's fine, but there's a lot of that on vision cards. And if you're kind of overlooking the, you know, eligible units, it's one of those cards that I think a lot of people downplay just because there doesn't seem a lot of like good synergies inherently, and Roy's not like a powerful enough unit to just go ham on investing in him as your carry unit. So you know, I have tempered expectations for it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that the one thing I will say about it is the magic res penetration stat is a super rare one to get on a vision card. It's not something we've seen very often. So when you think about a unit like maybe Summer Helena, like one of the main drawbacks of her was kind of her innate penetrations.
Yep.
So this is one way you could get that over to her. And we do have Kefka coming in too, who this card could be pretty good for. I believe he does have some penetrations innately, but obviously the more you can get, you know, that's always a good thing. The one thing I will say about this card is that it's not something that I would consider like as a primary slot. It doesn't have really any of the kind of key ones that I would be looking for to kind of, you know, get that primary treatment. Unless I would say if I was going specifically against like a Pierce team, but you know, as you said, there's other cards out there that can do that already today.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Yeah, sub card for sure. And to your point on the logic of the scarcity of magic res pen, would have been nice to have an extra magic type of weapon type on there. But there are a couple of units on here that still use magic attack types. If you think of characters like Sylvie or Elena, they technically do have magic type attacks in their kit. This will help them. So this is again one of those cards that I think sometimes people look too high level on and don't realize that even the sub job effects, it actually has a nice like tangible benefit. But Yeah, tempered expectations for sure.
Yeah,
So
100%.
good. I know he's coming. I'm just going to mention it with the unique set of gloves. I don't really think it's a lot to necessarily talk about, though. I don't think it's a very special weapon. It's a great weapon for Roy, but I don't really think it offers anything to characters outside of him. It's just a basic magic attack 15, and the magic stats on it are pretty whatever. So great for
Yeah,
Roy, but yeah,
if I didn't pull for Roy, I don't even think I would make one, to be honest. I
uh,
mean, we have
I would agree.
plenty of gloves with 15 magic attack, so
Yep.
pretty underwhelming otherwise.
No, couldn't agree more. For sure. For sure. Well, good. All right. So then on that topic of new stuff coming this week, we also have a couple new unit awakenings and an MA2 in particular. I think the big highlight of awakenings to look at is Miranda, who's getting her Transcendence. And that Transcendence, for those haven't seen it yet, it's a magic res penetration of 20. It's also a decrease of skill activation time on both attack and non-attack type, which pretty awesome for her time mage stuff. I don't know if people often use her in that capacity, but that's a nice thing certainly. And then she's also getting a big passive upgrade where her passive that they've been stacking things onto is, in addition to what it already has, getting a 50% heal back, which many of the other tank units are getting. And in particular for her, I think is fantastic because she great defense, but a little squishier against magic. So overall, I'm very happy with what they've done with her as a unit. Have you played with her at all or seen her at all? Any thoughts on the Transcendence here?
I'm very excited for Miranda. She's going to be an instant 140 for me. I've already had her at 120 for forever, and I've been using her, kind of through this Fire Evade kind of upstart that's been going on. She's great against that. She's very, very tanky against slash damage and also, obviously Fire Element. The one interesting thing about her heal back that I did notice, most characters we've seen, like the Snows and Mons and etc., it's like a percentage-based heal where they'll get, like a 40% heal back. Hers is actually like a Cura heal back. It's 120
Oh,
times.
okay.
So I thought that was interesting. So normally, like when we see that on like auto cure and things like that, a lot of those magic units will get, maybe like a 6k, maybe even like a 7k heal depending on their healing power. So that's something we can expect out of Miranda, where she'll essentially get, almost a full heal back when that triggers. So that's pretty nice.
That is very nice. Yeah, I've loved her. I've tried to tinker with a couple different water teams against this fire meta. She does seem to still be one of the best units to go toward. I don't think she's oppressively good, but yeah, her jamming thrust ability in particular. Maybe not against Yuffie because of the guaranteed hit nullification, but at least against like Sorrow, Halloween Elvira, King Mont, who is still able to evade a couple hits, she absolutely shuts that down.
Oh, she deletes them. She
Yeah,
one shots the evade units,
it's
and even
fantastic.
Mons, she usually can damage cap him too.
Yep.
So
Yep, she's an excellent unit. It's honestly hard to make a party of three sometimes, but she's got a very strong case for it. Particularly as a magic damage dealer. Right now the two best water units are arguably, you could say Astrius and then Perrine. I think Amnelis is in there too, but if you do need that third unit to be a magic unit, I think Miranda's as good as any that they have to offer. Yeah, in addition to that, we do have a couple other extra units. I don't know if they're necessarily noteworthy though. I know Ziza, Victoria are the two other UR units getting their dream upgrades. Looked at them, they're okay, but I don't think it's anything that we can really theorycraft or make any meta predictions on. I don't think either of those units stood a chance in kind of having a comeback. I don't know if you feel differently or see anything differently.
Uh, Ziza, not really. I mean, she's always been kind of a little bit more of a manual unit, and even in manual play, her heyday is kind of behind her. She just doesn't have the survivability or the evasion to really stand up to really anyone. Victora, I think I'm a little higher on Victora. I think that the one stack Mirage that she gets is really really good, especially where she's a really good flanking unit, and her limit burst I think is still great. Personally, I mean, she's obviously not going to stack up as well against 100 cost units, but for limited, she is a 70 cost unit. I think she's a good one, so I'll probably awaken her at some point.
Right on. No, yeah, I mean, I do like her Mirage. I think that was a very important thing because she's very squishy. I do still think she has some like AI issues, just being limited in what she brings for buffs. But you're right, for a 70 cost unit, for what you should expect, the Awakening, from what I can tell, is a nice little power creep bump for her, but probably not anything too drastic. And I know we also have some other MR units. I know Raryu, the Dark Gunner, and Etra, and then Uni even, which a lot of those SR units we look for hidden gems, kind of like SR Leela. Don't think Uni is one of those. They weren't strong enough to begin with. Not that Leela was either, but what they gave them, I can't really see being used in a Guild War setting. Maybe though, because Water does have some gunner units that if you wanted to throw them in the mix, but that's a real reach.
So Uni is one that I have to give another shout out to just as a manual favorite. He really the only unit in the game that can completely shut down CT and haste mechanics all in
Yes.
one.
Yes.
and that's kind of his unique niche. The trouble with him is that, and obviously he has like really long range on that. He can get something crazy like 11 or 12 range on that
So
when you consider his
I
passives.
would say it's 8 by default. He can go range 2. Yeah, range 2 another passive. So up to 10 squares. And I would imagine if you had someone externally, give him a range +1 buff, that goes up to 11 squares. Yeah.
Yeah, so either way, like the range is really strong. The trouble really has been getting him his agility into a place that kind of makes it usable to kind of get out that skill early before the enemy has either started quickening or started using haste and things like that. So he's getting a 20% agility bump. For him, that's going to be 8 agility. It's not going to make him fast by any means, but it's going to make, a considerable difference. You should be able to get maybe up into high 80s or low 90s now for agility, which, for an SR unit,
Yeah.
that's fine enough. So
Definitely. In terms of other upgrades, we also have Minwoo's MA2, which I know Minwoo has also been another great manual PvP unit. No dream yet for her, but her MA2, little extra magic bump, 5%, but the real things about her, get an extra 15 healing power and 15 defense, which I think is perfect for what she needs. She is supposed to be, at least from, speaking from experience on the PvP auto side, kind of like a bulkier curative mage. She is supposed to kind of spam a lot of those heals. The health pools have gotten relatively larger as well since she's been in the game. So kind of need that extra oomph with the healing power to keep those guys up, and certainly fits well. I don't know if it'll have a massive change on the manual PvP side of things. I also think her usage is diminished anyways. I don't really see her around very much, so it's nice. But these selection quest units kind of have a pretty low ceiling.
yeah, I agree with this. I don't think this is going to considerably change a ton for this unit. I like it, like it's kind of a small power creep adjustment, but I think that she's going to get a much nicer upgrade when her 140 comes around. I'm looking forward to that much more.
Definitely. And then last thing to kind of cap things off, some of the new content. We are getting new water selection quest to finalize the stages for Kumakiri +1. That's the katana. Not a lot to say on that, in my opinion, personally, just because that katana is so niche to the magic scaling katana units. There's only a couple of them. So while probably a great upgrade for Rachess, and obviously she does amazing things for PvE content in terms of all that we've talked from like guild raids and stuff like that. I don't know if this is going to have a massive trickle down effect on anything.
No, I mean who is really even the other unit that can use it? It would be like Varouche and
Varouche,
then
yeah.
like maybe Miranda, I think, uses katanas as well, the new Miranda unit.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe it could be kind of but Miranda does have her own weapon that comes along with her that's I think will be either comparable or maybe even better than this for her. So
I agree.
yeah, this is a Rachess weapon, which I like Rachess and I like using her in PvE and in story and things like that. So I like to +1 all this selection quest equipment. Whether the general player or average player should, this one is probably one that you can wait on.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's only a couple that I think the general player base would actually get like consistent value out of for the time and the awakening materials it takes for those
Oh yeah.
MR units. But honorable mention, we're getting a new story chapter 2. It's nice to see that. I know they kind of paused for a while. As much as I like the warrior, the crystal stuff, I do think those storylines kind of get a little boring after a while. And even the one that's going right now, I feel like it's kind of the storyline's kind of average, kind of stereotypical for what you expect. And obviously, I'm very excited, given what they set up with the prelude, to see how our main storyline keeps going. I know JP has a lot more ahead of us, but yeah, any progress of that, I'm always appreciative of.
Actually, they're not that much further ahead of us. The story like progress is really slowed down even for them. I think because they're yeah, obviously the like you said, the another story thing has been kind of ongoing. I'm hoping that now that it's over there that they'll kind of get back to it and progress the story because honestly, I think that that's one of the game's best assets. It's one of the things that universally is praised, at least after kind of a slow start at the beginning. The more recent chapters, I think people are generally pretty happy with and pretty engaged in. So
Absolutely.
hopefully they'll keep up the progress there.
Definitely. I agree entirely. So good. All right. Well, that brings us on to the next section here where we talk about the war room. It's a little more about map analyses, the meta snapshots, PvP results. Unfortunately, because we're in limited guild war at the moment, we don't have the votive stats to look at like the meta aspect that we saw last week, but we can still talk about limited guild war and quick pick and whatnot. I know limited guild war is now on that. We looked at the map last week. It's kind of that old school sniper map across the two valleys. It's been fun so far. We've had what, like 3 days or more than that, a couple days into it now. What are you
Yeah.
finding so far in limited guild war? What are you running with? What are you seeing? What are your thoughts?
So personally, I am running a lightning team. So I have been very excited for Alphonse, and I worked him up and have him on the team, and I paired him with Skahal. And then, yeah, I have just some support behind them. Initially, I was using Slime, but I did have 10 cost left on the table, so I brought in Naya, and I think she's been even
Oh
better.
yeah.
So yeah, that team's been working good. In terms of like teams that I'm seeing out there, I think it's been the dark team that we saw last time. Same same thing. I don't think that team is going to be going anywhere for limited like for forever at this point.
No, no.
It's too good. It's too cost efficient. Like it's something that it's accessible for most players now. Like obviously SR Leela, it's very easy to awaken her even to the max for a very small amount of Viz. And Lucia was a very popular unit too, and obviously Sephiroth is could be the most popular unit ever in this game. So
I would agree with
how about
that.
you? What are you saying?
We are seeing a lot of that too. I will say that team is very beatable on this map. This map is not conducive to what they like to do in terms of just movement and opening rotation, what they lack for like traditional jump and getting across. But obviously, it is everywhere. I know on attack, I'm personally also using Alphonse, but I'm also using Perrine and Slime. So I'm doing a double striker with the Slime. And yes, I've actually reincarnated Alphonse the most out of any unit so far. I think I'm up to 50 reincarnations with him at the moment.
Nice.
Yuffie was slightly behind at like 45. But yeah, having really great results. That team is obliterating the dark teams and even the fire evade teams, where both of them do pretty well against them in this map. Yeah, overall, I've not seen as much missile as I might have thought. Obviously, missile's kind of it's got its time to shine, but I think the cost of this map limits what a lot of the missile units want to do. I just don't know if you can make those triple unit teams like you could and be as strong as to compete with some of these 100 cost units that you're seeing. But overall, it's been a really fun experience. It's been a lot of I've seen a lot of good win teams now with Dario's Dream upgrade as well. People have been running that a lot. And overall, happy to, like I said, to see an old map be used with new units. It's kind of cool to see how people theorycraft on a map now, and now they have all these new mechanics and movement capabilities and TMRs to play with. It's been good so far for sure.
One thing I was going to say when you were mentioning missile and how you haven't seen it, one way I think that it can be successful is if you kind of play with the slot one, like in I think that can actually be a good spot for a tank if you have good mobility on the tank, meaning they have jump 2 and maybe even move 4 so that they can actually just move right down the front of the stairs rather than going past their teammates from that slot. It's good for two reasons. First, it's going to really separate the tank from your team, so you're potentially out of AoE radius. But then it's also going to kind of draw the enemy kind of into the the valley there,
Yeah.
and maybe potentially make them use another buffing cycle as they're trying to move over towards the tank. And that can then allow your other two units, maybe in slot 2 and 3, to kind of get a crossfire as they're trying to make that way over to your tank. So I think that is one way where that I have seen missile units be pretty good, and I think that maybe if you had somebody like a Nasha with Curry and Alaya, I think that's a pretty cool team.
Yep.
But yeah, that's something that I played around with a little bit.
Totally. I'm glad you brought up the move 1+1 too. I remember when I was tinkering with that strike team at first, I threw Shikuchi on Alphonse. I had him in slot 1 just doing some initial mocks. And yeah, like that dude just like jumps across the valley. I didn't realize how easy it was now
It's so good.
to traverse that. Yeah, the map knowledge nowadays is far better than it was back in the day. So yeah, it's good to see though. I'll be excited to see what else we can come up with, but I think we're pretty set in what people are going to be using so far. And then on that note of new game modes, we also have Quick Pick out this week. I do really appreciate this game mode. I love the little chicken matchup that happens sometimes. You got 3 elements, another 3, and someone else has your counter element. You're deciding, like, oh, are they going to pick the counter element or not? Like, what am I going to do? And then obviously just watching things unfold. But how you faring in Quick Pick so far this week?
I'm doing okay. I don't go like ham on this mode. Like I like it enough, and I try, but I don't like fine tune or min max. Like I don't put like a ton of time into it. But you know, I'm like it ranked like in the low 200s or high 190s. So my record's decent enough. I'm kind of marching towards master ranks.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm using mostly I'm sticking with fire evade mostly, and I have kind of a lightning for the bluff. I haven't seen all that much water though. It's mostly
None.
I haven't been able to do as well with fire against dark on this particular map just because of how long it is. And I think that the fire team works much better when you can get in early before the enemy gets multiple buffs off. And obviously Yuffie's buff can start wearing off too when she has to kind of move in. So
Yeah.
that's been I think a little bit tougher for fire this time around against dark.
I would agree with that. I've lost a couple times to fire, but I think it was user error as opposed to the fire team being exceptionally good. I've been trying to run a lightning team primarily, and I'm running Alphonse, Renan, and Resnick, and it's actually been working fairly well, particularly against dark. I've actually won like one or two matches against fire, but it basically beats everything else. It beats ice pretty handily, from what I can tell. Other win teams as well, and I stuck with that team as opposed to Skahal instead of Resnick because of the new Full Metal Vision card, where Renan is one of the benefactors of everything on there. And so
Nice.
between the two of them, I got Alphonse with the Dragoon Helm from Kane, and I got Renan using his own TMR, which gives haste. So essentially, they both kind of start up, both give themselves haste. Resnick's like a square behind because he doesn't have the same movement, and Resnick just does great things to heal them, the unit res and everything. And Renan is very, very, very sturdy right now. That Pierce buff they gave him, when I see win teams and even the Sorrow sub job, when he's got that Pierce damage, Renan
Hmm.
does exceptionally well. But yeah, tempered. And my backup team is Resol, Glaciella, and Summer Jaden. And that's kind of my team for if I see Fire Evade, where if I go, all right, if it's like a true Fire Evade, I'll throw in that win team hyper accuracy, and maybe I can scare off that fire team from actually being used. So it's been fun. I definitely like it.
I could see Jaden being pretty good with. I think we talked last time about kind of the length of the map and how that suits missile units.
Yep.
He only has like a couple of arcing shots though, so that maybe some of like the range height could kind of throw him off a little bit.
It, it,
Have you been finding that at all?
it
Or
can. Oh man. Well, so the biggest thing is predictive fire. Yeah, he's shooting his teammates in the back of the head all the time. That happens pretty frequently. But splash shower actually does a ton of damage. People aren't gearing up for missile res, and honestly, not a lot of spirit either. We're obviously in like a very physical heavy meta by and large. But I've got the bow tie on him out of the 6 units, and so I essentially have him doing his opening buff, which is the agility up for a whole team. Then he does the second one, which is the magic and spirit. But then I also have his the regular Jaden TMR, which is missile attack and the barrier. So,
hmm.
it's one of those rare things that he does keep his distance, but should he get hit by a random AoE, he does not get one shot or killed immediately or very easily. So he does well, and obviously the arithmetician sub does well with that too on some of the range. So it's been a good mix of things. And that's essentially what we have for the war room at this time. That's our two game modes at the moment. We will skip ahead to the Leonis Spy Report, where we look ahead to things in JP, primarily here on Final Fantasy V, now that we've gotten some additional information. I know Bart's in particular has generated a little bit of buzz just from some of the unique mechanics that he has. I know the big thing that a lot of people are talking about are the AoE teammate follow-up attacks that I need to honestly look more at this. My knowledge of the Final Fantasy V units is still pretty limited, but from what I can tell, it's basically just like if you're standing around him, you'll do follow-up attacks. I think it's as simple as that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so it's I believe it's like a range of 3, and I think it even has like a range height associated with it too. It might be like range height 1. But yeah, so you could you could have him sitting next to like Jaden in the light element, for example, and just camping back there with him, and you get follow-up attacks from when Jaden uses his attacks from afar. So
Yep.
that's I can definitely see like some new cool strategies kind of built around this capability. Yeah, any kind of new mechanics that come in, that's always very exciting. It's one way to kind of engage the veterans like us that have kind of seen pretty much everything in the game at this point. So I
Right.
like that they're still kind of coming and innovating on the mechanic side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is another light slash unit, so on the one hand, I'm kind of like, oh, it's a little redundant. You don't want to see elements get too pigeonholed, but at the same time, if an element's really good at something, you obviously want to lean into it as well. And so between Sylvie and Elena, you mentioned, I think that Miranda, the new Miranda, there's a lot of good slash units there, not including Locke and Violet, obviously. So it is a little one-dimensional, but Bart's does seem to bring something interesting here with the giant AoE imperil of 30. That's not one that you see on very many characters at all. And then obviously the unique mechanics that we talked about. He's also got Dispel Courage, so there's a couple things there to like. He's also got a 38% slash resist imperil for himself on his limit break. So you talk about like just pure damage numbers. It seems like you can get it done. Got a typeless attack on the sub job. Like there's a lot of good things there to kind of pick apart.
So when you heard like 100 cost free unit, like we were talking about last week, we kind of joked about Thancred, and that kind of triggers us when we think back on that. But everything that I've seen so far of his kits and his stats and what he can do, he seems like a legitimate 100 cost. And I think I said last week, I think that Edward was one of the best free units that we've seen. Bartz is looking like he could take the crown. So. He looks very very strong, and yeah, definitely looking forward to him.
Yeah.
He's got like he's got AoEs. I think he's kind of a good all around unit where he's not weak in any one area. Like he's not hyper accurate to begin with, but he's accurate enough. He's got a pretty good starting accuracy. He's got pretty good HP, really nice attack, and then he's got a good mixture of like AoEs and single target attacks in the kit. Good utility, like you said, he's got courage in there as well,
Yep.
and then he can remove courage. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
It's
like
good
it.
stuff. Yeah. And we have this conversation every time. Who's the best free unit? And I'm almost tired of having the conversation because you know what? They're all like home runs. Even when you go back to someone like Tifa, who was our free unit, like even her has yielded enormous results over time. Obviously, we mentioned Ed, as you just said, but each one of them, I feel like raises with the power creep of the game. Locke was another one they got for free, and obviously Locke was incredibly good with lights. So I'm very happy that the units they do decide to give out for free, even though you still have to acquire all the shards. It's still very expensive to max them. It's they've done a good job in what they've offered us.
I think the one dud there was Hope and Cecil.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. See, well,
Uh,
Cecil was a gimme. That wasn't even like that was like a I don't even know. JP did not get them for free. We did. That was kind of a nice thing, and I'm
right.
glad we did because by God, did he not age well. And yeah, Hope neither. Hope is going to be absolutely left in the dust. I just realized this. I didn't know this week. Of the job-based vision cards, Hope's boomerang is on none of them. It's
Correct.
apparently a coding error or something. So, yeah, if job-based vision cards the future, Hope is in the past.
Yeah, they just keep disrespecting him. Even like the one buff that is kind of unique about him with like the enhancing physical damage. The other unit that's coming with Final Fantasy Lena or Final Fantasy 5 Lena is she has like a juiced up version of that where her heal gives not only increased 20% of physical damage but also 20% magical damage.
Oh,
So yeah, she looks like a legitimate support unit. She is going to be kind of like in the Resnick kind of vein, I think. Doesn't really have kind of the debuff protection or debuff removal capabilities, but she brings other things to the table, like her re-raise that she can put onto her teammates and to herself. And then she also has some like AP restoration that's really strong too.
yep.
So I think that Lena is I'm pretty excited for her. I think that that re-raise that I was just mentioning, it does also give chain protection. So I'm just picturing that her throwing that onto Jum, who with her 140, Jum gets some innate chain protection. So
Right.
I think that that's gonna go really really well with her. With her.
Yeah, I think she's an excellent addition to Win for what they've historically had for support units. I think she's right up there with many of the others, and she seems to have enough bulk just from some of the AoE resistance they give her. Obviously, supports aren't supposed to be the most survivable characters in the world, but I think they did a lot of really good things here in her kit up and down. It's pretty straightforward, to be honest. It's I mean, one of the abilities is exceptionally complex looking, where it gives the elemental chain res. It also gives some earth resistance, which is kind of interesting considering that they're wind units. But when you also consider Dark Ramu, who also gives earth resistance, there's actually something to be said there for how well wind will put up a fight against earth teams, which is very interesting. You don't see it come along very often, but it does happen occasionally where that element resistance is enough to still even the scales when it really should be lopsided at first glance.
And then, I mean, she does have kind of like a mixture of both magical and physical mitigation. So, like her self buff, she can give herself some protect. On her limit burst, she gives both protect and shell. She does have Emerald Echo as well in her passive, so she can get that up to like a 4 turn duration, which is really cool. The one thing that's like easy to miss on her though, I think, is her counters. So she has the new Miranda unit. She has her job as a sub job, and that gives her that special missile counter that goes off 100% rate if it's missile damage, and just cuts the damage by 30%.
Awesome.
That's super good on a support unit.
Yep.
And then she has kind of her own unique job, kind of makes a magical version of that. It doesn't have quite as good a chance to trigger, but it does give you that same 30% reduction on magic damage. So depending on the meta, depending on what you're seeing, you can kind of choose your adventure there for the counters. So
Definitely.
I think that she's going to be really, really solid.
Yep, and 90 cost unit to boot. That's I think
Hmm.
another nice thing to throw in there.
A little bit easier to pull, which
Yeah.
after all these 100 cost units, you definitely appreciate that, I think.
Yep, for sure, for sure. Well, good. Well, I know there's probably more about Final Fantasy V. I know there is a vision card as well. Seems interesting. Just very briefly, it's human killer for physical attacks. It's accuracy of 25, and it's elemental chain resistance of 24. So I have not looked terribly deep yet in the units that it does affect. Just eyeballing it here out loud for some of you. Bart's, I know King Bradley, the new Stern as well. Old favorites like Joom, Celeste are on there, King Mont's on there. So it does seem like a pretty, universally well applied vision card given the amount of tanks and physical damage dealers it covers. So I do have some high hopes for this card for what it can bring, just again from the accuracy perspective as well as the chain resistance, which I think is again more of a more popular mechanic.
Yeah, so I had done a community post this week about the chain resistance and kind of a look like behind the curtain, so to say, kind of what the mitigation numbers were. So when you look at like 24% for that, it's not like huge. I don't love it, on its own. I think that, on the first hit of the chain with 24%, you're probably looking at like, maybe 5 or 6% reduction and then kind of the total damage you might receive. And
Right.
obviously it will go up a little bit the more hits you take consecutively, but I think in terms of like the vision cards themselves, I think that Gumi was a little bit conservative with that particular number, and kind of when you think about it's situational, in terms of the mitigation that it provides. And also the fact that we're kind of gradually moving towards a more multi-element meta where units are going to be maybe more chaining on damage type rather than element.
Right.
So I think as time goes on, it might be a little bit less relevant. But yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not very high on it as a very strong mechanic, but I think it's one of those ones that I when you think of a tank, and actually I've noticed with the Alphons this week in particular, where Al does not have courage or re-raise or a self heal back, that once you kill him, he's done. There's literally nothing you can do to prevent that. And so just that chain reduction that he has on his buff of 80, if you are taking 3 or 4 hits in a row and that fourth hit's the one that's going to kill you, like it bails him out sometimes where it actually doesn't end up killing him. He's got a sliver of health. Resonant comes in, bam, you're good to go. So it's not a strong mechanic, and I agree the number you on this card, that 24, relatively low in terms of material impact, but I think mechanically for tanks in particular, in terms of bursting them down easier, I think it's like a nice value add.
I agree with that. I think that the higher that you can get with that number, it obviously it becomes a lot better. So the 80% protection on the first hit was almost 11% reduction. On the second hit, you're at almost 20%, and then you're kind of going up from there. So at the higher values, I think it is very significant. And I think that with the cards, you can potentially stack them. Like there is another card, the Reagan card, that also has this. So maybe there's something interesting there, but
Well, to your point, Joom has it too, and in her kit as part of the mastery ability, and if Lena can apply it too, it's one of those things. It's like the additive effect. Probably, that's how they're balancing
right.
it. Good. All right. Well, that's it. All we really wanted to cover for Final Fantasy V at the moment. We do have a lot of really great questions here that everyone suggested. We have 5 total questions to go over here as part of the Leonis Town Square. So we'll kick things off with the first of them. Any thoughts on what you'd like to see for added guild content? More statues or creative buffs, raids more often, other new content, whatever it may be. Guild engagement can feel a bit off during normal Guild War weeks. I don't know if you've given any thoughts. Is there anything coming to mind immediately?
So, I mean, first thing I'll say is that I've loved guild raids for a while. I've made, a bunch of videos about them. I always like when those come around to kind of change things up and kind of what we're doing and collaborating with as a guild. I was very interested when they announced the PvE mode for guilds. So that we were actually supposed to have it by now, I think. JP had it around their 3rd anniversary, and it wasn't well received. It was kind of like some kind of, you were challenging different camps on a map or things like that, and you kind of work together to take everything down.
Yep.
That's kind of what I knew about it, but hopefully they're kind of retooling that and making it better, because I know that the feedback in JP wasn't great. I kind of liked the general premise of it. I would like to kind of work with the guild more and do some PvE style things. I think that's pretty fun and something different that we don't have in the game. So
Yep.
I hope that they are kind of continuing on iterating on that and kind of come up with something new.
Yeah, totally. I don't have any creative ideas for brand new content because even then, I feel like it can be difficult sometimes if you have too much content recurring. Not everyone can always focus 100% of the time, 100% of the days if you're doing new things. So limited guild wars is a nice way to kind of break up that monotony, and obviously guild raids is too. I think for me personally, I don't know if I want new guild content. I think I just want enhanced current content, meaning AKA longer mocking hours. We've asked that forever. Let us mock 24 hours a day. I absolutely hate having to constrain that between the business hours of when I'm working, when lock is, yada yada. But even then, if you could add some small tweaks in there, definitely more teams. We only have 5 teams right now. You can set for offense or defense, which I would love to have up to 10, or if you want to have 10 different teams that you can challenge yourself, and really just kind of some quality of life things there too for setting up your teams. That I think if you just enhanced the current guild content, I think you'd actually see more people getting more out of it and wanting to spend more time in it. I know they're implementing a feature, and I'm pretty sure this is coming in, where you can essentially mock versus all 30 teams at once, and it'll tell you the results. Like, that's a great quality of life change, but like one of many that I would want to see, that I think more people would get more out of Guild Wars because of it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one, kind of for the stress test of a build that you've put together, and kind of, you might be able to mock a few times and not see all of the RNG from, different counters that may
Yep.
proc, or different slight variations in the movement, or etc. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, I like the other things too. Those are things that I've wanted in the game as well. So,
Yep.
Gumi, if you're listening, please.
We need it. We need it. So good. All right. That's question number one. Question number two. Any thoughts if a global exclusive or global first job vision card would create a meta that we didn't see on the JP side? And just some examples they gave: the Dwayne vision card, Shadow Lynx's vision card, Hyo's vision card. Any thoughts there if you think a global exclusive vision card could create a meta?
100% it could. I don't know if what I mean, one on its own, it's going to be hard for that to happen. The unit itself would also need to be a big part of that, I think, as well. But I mean, that Dwayne Vision card, it's very, very good. I mean, it's
Yep.
got area resistance on there. Well, it's not something that's going to create a meta, but I think it's more a cumulative effect. You would need either a great unit and a great vision card, or you would need maybe a couple consecutive good vision cards that affected maybe some of the same job groups that could then make a new team around it.
Totally. I would agree. Yeah, it's very hard for one vision card by itself to make a massive change. It can, like the Wind vision card, the Sadali vision card that's got both agility and AoE resistance, of the new Full Metal card. Kind of the same idea. When you have vision cards economy that are that strong and can create some different synergies, yeah, you have a better chance of that happening. But to your point, you need 6 vision cards. To me, a meta at this point is more that it's really just the sum of its parts. There's no longer necessarily a meta defining character like there may have been. There's characters that are crucial to certain metas, but I don't think there's like one character or one vision card that really drives it. It's really all of them in conjunction. But I have no reason to think that they couldn't. It would, to me, just be which 2 characters have the most upside synergy that hasn't been explored yet. That if you take the best tank in the game, the best healer in the game, and you can suddenly max both their AoE and agility on one vision card together, like what can you yield as a result? Yeah, you can probably create something, but I don't know if it's a simple light switch flip. Good. All right. Number three. This will be, I think, an interesting one. I have a few caveats to it. What element seems weakest at the moment, and what would it take for that element to get top dog status? I'll let you go first.
Ooh, okay. Right now, today, I would probably say Earth.
Well, I'm with you.
And it's pretty close. Like, I think that water is right there with them. The only reason I'm not saying water is because fire is so good right now, and they're so prevalent in the meta that there are some really good water teams that you can make, and they're getting a lot of pick. They're getting high pick rate right now because of that, and they can do their job. On the other hand, there really isn't. I wouldn't say there as much lightning being played right now. Obviously, that could change now with Alphonse coming into the game. Earth also, I think, isn't going to be all that great against taking Alphonse down right now.
No.
I don't know if you've tested it out yet. They're not good. That is also something that's going to change very soon. Bradley is right around the corner. So, and
Yep.
then Dialdo, and they're going to get some great pieces for that. But today, right now, yeah, I would definitely go Earth.
Yep. I would agree. Today, right now, I'm going to go Earth as well. That is going to change soon. Obviously, there's also a product of Rugia not getting picked, just the timing of the economy of people pulling. So people not having him also makes that element weaker. I think I'm a little bit higher on water, as not as close. I think water has enough vision card strengths, like between what they have for amount of AoE resistance on like Leviathan and Holiday Party, and what they have for I know just like a whole bunch of other vision cards. I do know they're unit wise maybe a little bit limited, but they do have some pretty strong units. I'm gonna just cut through all that though. I'm gonna give a super hot take. I'm gonna not say Earth because it's gonna change very soon. I actually think once Earth drops, I think the weakest element would be light. I mean it. So for me, Wing Stern that's coming out, we've talked about it, has some holes. He's not an incredible unit. He's a very good unit. Light is immensely one-dimensional though. It's all light slash. It's all evade units, boom or bust nothing. They've been relying on the same unit or two for like 2 years. Their light vision cards are very outdated. They're still immensely good. Bahamut is still an exceptional vision card. So isn't the Elena card. So isn't the Jaden card. But they're old, and so the game's evolving, and I don't think Light's keeping up with it. And as all these elements start coming out, particularly with how strong Dark is at the moment, that if you think that, all right, Dark's is good, that's really the only thing Light is good for. It's like a max Dark resist build to take down Dark. But Dark's got way more versatility, from Sephiroth to the new Dwayne upgrade to obviously Raph coming out to Darkfina, Halloween Lucia, Night of Ruin Stern, Lemuray. You literally go down the list and every Dark unit has like a place, but you go through Light and I don't think you get that same result. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think that's
No, I mean that's definitely like a based take, and I think that I think that you convinced me. Like it's not one that I would think of just because Light has always been good. It's like a safe pick. Like there is a lot of good there, but in the context and when you think about like you said, everything that's been built up over the past year, Light didn't get a ton after Locke last year. That I mean they got Hope, which we already talked about how bad he is, and then they got Sylvie, which. Sylvie, I think that that's kind of my one thing where I'm kind of maybe rethinking that a little bit. I think that she does make Stern a lot better, and I've said that for a while now. It remains to be seen if that's if that comes to pass.
right,
But yeah,
right. And
we'll see pretty soon.
it's true. And one thing, just on the note of Sylvie, that one of the Light's biggest gimmicks has always been the courage and re-raise mechanics, and it's obviously having a lot more counterplay nowadays. So these characters who, as a crutch, relied on the courage, like Engelbert and Elena, and Jaden with the zombie mask, and now Sylvie with the re-raise. Once you start getting more prevalence of neutering those mechanics, I think Light loses a lot of its gimmicks in terms of what it can do.
Definitely. Yeah, especially when you have Sephiroth who removes them both on one large diamond AoE.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yep, it's true. So cool. All right. Which brings us to question number 4. What Final Fantasy unit would you most like to see come to War of the Visions that has yet to be announced? And then just like brainstorm that character. What element, what job mechanics would you want them to have, etc. So I'll let you kick things off there.
So I feel like we've taken a couple like variations of this one, but this one I think is a little bit different than how we've kind of looked at it before. In terms of like the Final Fantasy franchise, I want to say one, but I know that you're probably going to say it, so I'm going to go a different direction.
I won't, because the ones I said are very niche picks. Go
okay.
Run with it if you want.
So I was going to say Squall, but I thought that you might take him. But yeah, I want Squall in the game. In terms of like an element, I don't know, maybe Light, like maybe he's gonna bring Light back, but then again they just put out Bart's, so that doesn't seem right. I guess there's fire or ice, like he's kind of had those elements in some of the other gacha games I've played. I don't know, but he would obviously have to be a slasher, but maybe mix in some of the missile attacks with the gunblade, kind of similar to Final Fantasy 13 Lightning. And I think that would be kind of cool.
Actually, that'd be a cool mechanic, because you absolutely could, on some of his attacks, have him be slash, and then how Lightning is the follow-up attack, have his follow-up attack be missile based instead of slash based. Like you could get creative with the gunblade mechanics there.
Definitely.
Or if you wanted like imbue it with a certain element, I know his limit breaks, he's got different limits, so like you could have like a fire version of one and who knows, a different element of another. Yeah, you could get creative with him.
I wonder if they could implement maybe somehow like the draw mechanic into this game. I don't know if it. I mean, it doesn't seem like it would fit, but maybe it could be kind of like like almost like a mimic kind of move, where they see another unit uses something and they can kind of do the same thing back.
It's funny you say that. So I want that. Final Fantasy Brave Exvius had a Mastermind Zon who did something very similar. He would essentially copy enemy buffs if you wanted, or spread one teammate's buff to the rest of the team. A very long time ago, I actually did a Sadali mock character creation. And that was one of the things I wanted, was him to essentially have a mimic type of buff where like if an enemy had a buff and so Dolly was near them, then like all your teammates around it would also get that same ally buff or whatever it is. But that's a total side topic, but it's a good mechanic. I see no
Yeah,
reason why
that'd
they
be cool.
couldn't implement something similar.
Yeah.
This is a tough one because you obviously, if you say Final Fantasy unit, you got to differentiate. Like, all right, well, what's practical? What's my favorite? My favorite character is Laguna. I've said this on a couple of the streams. If they bring in Squall, then I want Laguna to be number 2 on that banner. But I'm gonna go super niche here as like a Final Fantasy unit that I want them to throw in here. I'm gonna go Furion from Final Fantasy II. They've kind of gone through all the numbered titles so far. One of the cool things, because I was very inspired by the rest of this question, asking what would you want their kit to be. One of Furion's big things as a character is that he can wield every single weapon, and I think the kit would be really cool if the main kit he could hit like all 5 weapon types, or maybe like Noctis has like the all weapon type in peril. If you want to do some kind of typeless attack, however you wanted to do it, I feel like you could get really creative there. Have him be able to equip any single weapon he wanted, like Slime does. So that part of the question got me really intrigued. So I kind of went that route with it instead.
I like that, especially if they could then use all of the job-based vision cards
Right,
too,
right.
like Slime. So yeah, that would be obviously he would have to be like 120 cost or like something like that. But yeah, that would be super cool.
Yeah, no, but you could balance it. I'm sure either modifiers or go a little lower on the utility or something.
Yeah.
I trust them. I don't know why I do, but I do.
For the most part, I mean they've other than a few mistakes, I think the balance is decent, and
Totally.
especially when you compare it against a lot of other gotcha games out there.
Yep. Yep. Well, that leads us to our fifth and final question. What's our favorite job upgrade of the non-unique jobs so far? And so I know I have 2 personally. I don't know if I think we probably agree on one of them. What are your thoughts so far on favorite job upgrades?
Favorite job upgrade of the non-unique job.
Can I say one? I think you'll agree with it.
Yeah, why don't you start on this one?
The pugilist. I know you and I were really high when they did that upgrade in terms of what they did for like range, the self heal mechanic. There's a whole bunch of things. That job was very difficult to make work for a while. So many characters have it that's such a good job upgrade considering that the game is now branching more into strike type damage. I think it's a really good one that jettisoned a lot of characters up that didn't have it before.
No, I agree. I think that they did a pretty good job with that one. Especially, I really love Demon Purger, and I don't know if you've seen Sephiroth use that, but he can heal himself like maybe 2 or 3K with that. It's pretty nice.
Yep.
I would maybe I might throw Knight into the ring, and not so much for. I mean, they didn't do like all that well with the actual abilities, although like Trinity Break is pretty good. That's one of the old jobs that I don't mind if my unit gets it because the passives are great
Right.
in general. So
Right. Yeah, they get that 40/res pen on one of them, and the other one they get the AOE resistance in addition to the debuff res. So
yeah.
I don't know if I've used either one of those passives a lot on my knight eligible units, but like I agree, it's a fantastic upgrade for both of them. I will give an honorable mention. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say when you think about like some of the like Hio coming in with Lancer, like you look at the passives that are there and then you compare them to like the Knight one. I feel like I much rather than him have those Knight passives on.
I would agree. Absolutely. And I will give a special shout out to another close one for me was the Black Mage upgrades. That was a job that was absolutely power crept and left in the dust by every single mage in the game. And so to have the barrier break on there and to increase some of the mods, to increase the passive ability, to have the magic attack in addition, like there's a lot of things there that Black Mage units just like it was literally useless. It had no bearing on anything. So I think they did some things to bring it back to prominence there.
The Aga spell, they got the Diamond AoE.
Yep.
And then the increased Toad chance, I think,
chance.
flies under the radar too. 50% Toad is really powerful.
It does. I didn't want to mention it because I haven't seen it in practice yet. I've yet to see an actual Black Mage Toad me. But yeah, you're right.
Really?
Really, that's serious. Yeah, that's a legit upgrade though. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, Skahal has done it to my Yuffie multiple times. So
you know what? Every Skahal I see, the Skahal is typically Staff Mage so far. So he just goes to the guaranteed hit there instead.
Well, if she still has her buff up, he won't use it though. That's the thing. So if that's still on, then he'll Toad her instead.
Really, most of the units I've seen, they'll still attempt to hit those evade units, even if the guaranteed hit doesn't work. That's interesting.
Maybe it depends on the accuracy versus evasion level.
Right. If it's 0%, probably goes for Toad. If it's like 10%, does the cast still. Yep. So good. All right. Well, that's everything we had today in a nutshell, just from a question perspective for what we have coming out this week. We've obviously had a lot of great stuff this last week for, new characters to play with. I am excited to see more of Ed Elric. I think people are slow building him a little more so than Alphonse is. But yeah, very interested to see what happens in the next coming weeks with them. But that's it for now. So, JB, if you want to say any final thoughts here.
Yeah, so as we said at the beginning, we are going to have a 1 week break here, but we will be back in a couple weeks, and we'll talk all about Bradley and kind of his impact on the get back. So
Most
we will
definitely.
see you guys then.
That sounds great. Have a good week, everybody. Take care.